Hello everybody, this is Courtney with Fiber Fox Studios, and today we're going to be learning this beautiful mosaic stitch. This is one that I came up with several weeks ago when I was playing around wanting to make a washcloth or dish towel, something of that nature. So I came up with this design and we're going to learn it today. It's a total of 12 rows that I'm going to teach you. And then we'll go over where you begin, rewind back to start the repeat again. I do want to mention that there is a mosaic chart available in my Etsy store for this particular design for those of you who prefer to work off of a chart rather than the tutorial. But you do not need to purchase that chart in order to do this design, because I'm going to teach you row by row, every single row that you need to know in order to create this and to move up to use this for like a larger section like what I'm showing here in this little swatch. So we're going to get started. You're going to be working in whatever size yarn you want, and please refer down to the description on the recommended hook size and ways that you can mix yarns. I provide all that information down below in that description. Today I am going to be working in color A, which is going to be this orange color, and color B is going to be the blue color right here on the outside of this ball. This is just some scrap yarns that I've caked up. The center is Bernat Pop. Unfortunately, I do not remember the colorway that this was, but the oranges all the way out to the pinks, which I think looks red for you guys on screen, those are all the same Bernat Pop cake. And then I have brought in some red heart yarns. I know the outside color that I'm using is called Scuba or Aruba. I can't remember. I'm sorry, you guys. So we're going to get started by grabbing, I'm going to work in size 4 worsted weight yarn or medium weight. So I'm going to be using a 5mm hook today. You, of course, are going to refer down to that description and figure out which hook you need for the size yarn you're using. So we're going to begin by getting a slip knot onto our hook, and this particular pattern is worked in multiples of 12. Plus 1 at the end. So this is a new multiple, and in a future video here in the coming weeks, I am going to teach you guys how to combine multiples. But for right now, we're going to get started by chaining in multiples of 12. So you're just going to grab your yarn after you place your slip knot on, of course. Grab your yarn and pull through the loop that's on your hook. So that's 1 chain. Here's 2. And we're just going to keep repeating that on down until we have reached the desired size for the project that we're doing. I'm going to be doing just a swatch with you guys, so I'm going to chain a multiple of 12, which is going to be 3 times over. So I'm going to chain 36 plus 1 at the end for a total of 37 chains. So you can chain that exact amount to match exactly with me, or you of course can chain a blanket, a purse, laptop bag, whatever project you're wanting to make with this. So we're going to pause here and you're going to come back in just a moment with me so we can move on to row 1. You want to have your starting chain for the project that you're making ready, and then we will start row 1 together. So you're meeting back up with me. I have a total of 37 chains in my color A, which is this orange kind of peachy color, possibly for some of you guys, but it's orange for me. So in this orange color, I'm going to be working row 1. So this is this is the only row where we don't have to immediately change color. You're going to be changing color every row when you're doing these mosaics, and I do recommend that you pull out at least 2 colors. You can always do more colors if you're wanting to have like a rainbow effect or something. You can use as many colors as you would like, but to learn this stitch, let's work in 2 colors. So for row 1, it's going to begin now, and we're going to be skipping this very first stitch. So the loop that's on our hook never counts. We're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to go into the second stitch from our hook, and we're going to make sure that we get under both loops, and we're going to do a traditional single crochet in this stitch. Go ahead and pull up a loop, grab and pull through 2. And that completes a traditional single crochet in the very first stitch. You are always going to do a traditional single crochet working under both loops in the first and the last stitch of every single row. So now we're going to begin the repeat for this row. So for row 1, the repeat is very simple. We're going to insert into the back loop only, So we're going to go right there, one loop on around the hook. We're going to go into that back loop. We're going to draw up a loop. We're going to grab and pull through 2, and that completes our first back loop only single crochet. Now we're going to go here into the very next stitch, and we're going to repeat that. We're going to grab up our loop and pull it up. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, and that's going to complete our second back loop only single crochet. So we're going to keep doing back loop only single crochets all the way down the entire row, and then we're going to meet back up when you're ready to do your very last stitch in this row. So the entire row all the way up until the last stitch, we're going to be doing the last stitch as a traditional single crochet, but every other stitch in this row is a back loop only single crochet. So we're just grabbing up that back loop just like so. So back loop only and completing out a single crochet. So we will pause here and meet back up in just a moment when you're ready to finish out this row. Alright, so you're meeting back up with me at the very end of your row. You have only one stitch left to work into. So we're going to go into that stitch and we're going to make sure that we're going under that V. So you want to be completely in the stitch, and we're just going to finish out a traditional single crochet. So we're going to grab and pull up our loop, and then we're going to grab and pull through those 2 loops to finish that out. So this is what you're going to have after you finish row 1. So now I'm going to show you how I bind off. You can bind off whatever way you prefer, but I like to chain up 2, 1 and 2. And then we have to clip our yarn on these mosaics. We are changing color. We're not working back and forth. So we're going to clip our yarn. And I like to go ahead and just pull the yarn on through that loop. And then I grab just above the 2 chains that I made, and I grab the tail over here in my right hand. And I'm going to pull on my tail as I slide my fingers down to form that little knot. So I like to knot at the end of each and every row so that my work never comes undone. So now we're going to be switching color for row 2. We're going to need to go ahead and switch color. So you're going to grab whatever you have chosen as your color B. For me, I'm doing the blue. So we're going to join that yarn on to our existing work, and we're going to begin row 2. So I've got my color B right here in my hand. I'm going to go ahead and do a slip knot, and I like to just wrap the yarn around 2 fingers, then I move it over into position. This is my working yarn that's over here between my thumb and my index. And then I just pull down on that and create a little slip knot. I've got some videos that show that quite a bit better, but what we're going to do is we're going to go here to our work. We're going to make sure that we're on the right side, and by right side we don't want to see all these bumps back here. We want to see the row just as it looked when we were working it. So we're going to go here to the very first stitch, and this is where we have to be very careful, because when you're looking at your work you can easily mistake this little side bump, which is actually our turning chain. You don't want to mistake that as the stitch and work into that. You want to make sure that you're looking right here at the top of your work and you identify that very first V, which is right here. That's where we want to insert to start row 2. So we want to slide in underneath that, just like so. And now we want to grab and join our yarn on, and then we're going to be pulling up that slip knot, like pull up that little loop right there. Now we're going to grab, I like to do a chain 1, and I grab the tail and the working yarn. You can just grab your working yarn if that's what you prefer, but we're going to chain 1. And now we're going to go right back into that very first stitch. So we're going right there into the same exact stitch. And we're going to go ahead and grab and pull up a loop and finish out a traditional single crochet, because this is our first stitch in the row. So we're always doing a traditional single crochet. So now the repeat for row 2, now that we're beginning row 2, is exactly the same as what we did for row 1. We're going to insert into the back loop only, and we're going to complete a back loop only single crochet all the way down the row in each and every stitch. So you're just going to simply do exactly as you did for row 1 here on row 2, only this time you're working in your color B. So you're going to insert into the back loop only, picking up only the back loop, and finishing out your single crochet. So we're going to keep working that same manner all the way down this row. So we are going to pause here, and we will meet back up when you're ready to move on to row 3. Remember, the very last stitch in this row, you must do a traditional single crochet. That helps us maintain nice straight sides. So make sure your very last stitch is under both loops. So pause here, and we'll be back in just a moment. And we are back. We're about to move on to row 3. So row 2 ended with our traditional single crochet in the very last stitch. And this is what your work is looking like after you complete row 2. So for row 3, I've already joined on to the very first stitch in the row with my traditional single crochet in color A. So for color A for me is this orange color. And we're going to begin row 3 now. And to begin row 3, start with your traditional single crochet in the very first stitch. And then we need to do 6 back loop only single crochets. So we're going to be crocheting in a few stitches before our repeat is going to start for this row. So we need to do our 6 back loop only single crochets over the next 6 stitches. So looking right here in the top of the stitch, see my V? This is my next stitch. I'm going to go into that back loop only. So just insert there into the back loop only. And we're going to finish out a single crochet. So we need to do 6 of these back loop only single crochets over the next 6 stitches. So here's my second back loop only single crochet. Hopefully this is coming out real clear for you guys. Here's my third back loop only single crochet. So right here into that stitch, back loop only. So there's my third. Here's the fourth back loop only single crochet. Here is the fifth back loop only single crochet. And here is the sixth back loop only single crochet. So now our repeat's going to start for this row, and this repeat is fairly easy to remember. We're going to be doing 2 drop down double crochets in the next 2 stitches, followed by 8 back loop only single crochets. So to start that repeat, we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, and right here we're going to identify our very next stitch, which for me is this stitch right here. To do our drop down double crochet, we are going to simply identify our next stitch, and then we slide our hook down 2 rows below, and we're looking for this little bump right here. We're going to turn our hook just like that to pick that up. So we've got our yarn already wrapped around our hook. So once we insert this our hook into that stitch, we are able to grab the yarn and pull up a loop with nice loose tension. So we don't want to draw this up and make it real tight. You can also place your thumb over it to hold it in place if you're worried that you're pulling up too much. Now we're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, and we're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, and that completes our first drop down double crochet. So now we're going to do that one more time. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook. We're going to make sure that we identify our very next stitch, and we want to make sure that we are not working into the same stitch that is covered by this drop down double crochet. So you just have to fold your work back to make sure you can see one stitch back here. And when we move that double crochet back into position, we can tell that this right here is our next stitch. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, identify our next stitch. We're going to slide down those 2 rows below and find that little bump. This is the front loop that's left from us doing those back loop only single crochets. So we're just going to slide underneath that. Hopefully that's easy to see. And now we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop, nice loose tension. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, grab our yarn and pull through 2. Now we need to do 8 back loop only single crochets over the next 8 stitches. So we're going to identify our next stitch, and we're going to grab and pull up a loop and finish out 1 back loop only single crochet. Now we're going to do that a second time because we need a total of 8. There's number 2. Here is number 3, back loop only, single crochet. Here is number 4, back loop only, single crochet. Number 5. Number 6. Going right there in that back loop only. Number 7. And number 8. So that ends our repeat. We begin over here with our 2 drop down double crochets, and it ends right here with the 8 back loop only single crochets. We're going to do that repeat again together one more time. So we're going to wrap our yarn, begin our repeat. We're going to do our 2 drop down double crochets. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook, identify our next stitch, slide down 2 rows below, so we're connecting the colors. We're going to find that little bump right there. That is what we want to pick up. Now we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop, nice loose tension. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, and we're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2. So that's our first drop down double crochet. We're going to make sure we're identifying our very next stitch. We're going to wrap our yarn, slide down right there 2 rows below. We're looking for that little bump right there. That's what we're picking up, is that front loop that we left. So now we're going to grab our yarn and pull up a loop. We're going to grab our yarn and pull through 2, and we're going to grab our yarn again and pull through 2 to finish out our drop down double crochet. So now we need to do our 8 back loop only single crochets over the next 8 stitches. So we're going to insert into that very next stitch and pull up a loop. And we're going to grab and pull through 2 to finish our back loop only single crochet. So we're going to repeat that a total of 8 times. So here's number 2 for me. Here's number 3. Here's number 4. Number 5. Number 6. And number 7. Last but not least, number 8 finishes our repeat. So on my swatch I have room to do the repeat again, but you guys are going to go ahead and pause here, and you're going to keep working the 2 drop down double crochets followed by 8 back loop only single crochets all the way down in sets like that all the way down the rest of your row, and we will meet back up when you're ready to move on to row 4. Remember that in your very last stitch of the row you're going to be doing a traditional single crochet. And for those of you who are worried about how the end of the row will work out, on these later designs that I've done, the end of the row and the beginning of the row are going to match up perfectly. So you are going to be ending your row just as you began your row. So you will have 6 back loop only single crochets, 1 traditional single crochet at the end of the row. So you have 7 stitches right there. So you're going to keep working in that same exact manner, doing your repeat, 2 drop down double crochets, 8 back loops to the end of your row, and we'll come back and move on to row 4 in just a moment. So we are back here for row 4. Row 4 is going to be worked in color B. So for me, row 4 is going to be worked in this blue color. We're going to get started by doing our traditional single crochet in the very first stitch of the row. And then I need to do 1 back loop only single crochet in the very next stitch before my repeat begins. So we're going to work right here, the very next stitch. We're going to go in there and we're going to do a back loop only single crochet in that very next stitch. Now my repeat's going to begin, and my repeat for this row is 2 drop down double crochets followed by 8 back loop only single crochets. So just like we just did, We're just positioned a little bit differently this time. So we're going to go right here into the very next stitch, and we're going to slide down and find that little bump. So we just slide directly down on that stitch. Now we're going to grab and pull up a loop, grab and pull through 2, and grab and pull through 2 to finish our first drop down double crochet. Now we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook again. We're going to find that very next stitch. We are going to slide down, going to find that little bump right there, and we're going to pick that up, and we are going to finish out our second drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. And now we're going to do 8 back loop only single crochets over the next 8 stitches. So there's 1, here is 2, here is 3, here's 4, number 5, number 6, going right there into that very next stitch, and number 7, and number 8 back loop only single crochets, and that ends our repeat. So our repeat is going to begin again. We're going to do that one more time together. So our repeat begins with the 2 drop down double crochets. So we are going to start that repeat right here. Here's my very next stitch. I'm going to slide down directly down 2 rows below and grab up that loop. Now I'm going to grab my yarn and pull on up a loop. I'm going to grab my yarn and pull through 2. And I'm going to grab my yarn and pull through 2. And that completes my first drop down double crochet. We need to do that one more time. So we're going to find our very next stitch, slide down and find that little bump. And we're going to go ahead and finish our second drop down double crochet. And now we're going to do our 8 back loop only single crochets over the next 8 stitches. So there's 1, here's 2, here's number 3, back loop only, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, and number 8. And that completes our repeat. So you're going to go ahead and pause here. We'll be able to meet back up when you're ready to move on to row 5, but you're going to be completing your repeat again all the way down the rest of your row, and your repeat begins with the 2 drop down double crochets, and it ends with your 8 back loop only single crochets. And you just keep repeating that on down the rest of your row. So we'll be back in just a moment to move on to row number 5. And we are back. We're ready to move on to row 5. I've already joined on with my color A, which is this orange color, right here in the very first stitch of the row with a traditional single crochet. And this is what your work is looking like after you finish up with row 4. So we ended and began this row 4 just exactly the same. We have our traditional single crochet right there in the last stitch of the row. So we're going to go ahead and start row 5. So for row 5, we're going to do 1 drop down double crochet immediately after our single crochet in the first stitch. So we're right here. It's our very next stitch. We want to identify the next stitch, slide our hook down 2 rows below and find that little bump. So hopefully that is coming up real good for you guys in the camera. And I'm getting a little bit out of camera there for a moment. I apologize. So we're going to finish out our drop down double crochet right here in the next stitch. Now our repeat is going to start for this row. Our repeat is going to be 2 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 4 back loop only single crochets, followed by 2 drop downs. So we're going to do all of that together. So we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets over these next 2 stitches. So we're working right over our previous drop downs. We're doing 2 back loop only single crochets, 1 in each of the next 2 stitches. Now we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets over the next 2 stitches. So we're going to identify our next stitch and slide down 2 rows below and pick up that bump right there. And now we're going to go ahead and finish out our drop down double crochet. And we're going to repeat that again for the second drop down double crochet right there. And now we need to do 4 back loop only single crochets over the next 4 stitches. So we're going to go 1 into the very next stitch. There's 1 back loop only single crochet. Here's number 2, number 3, and number 4. Now we need to do 2 drop down double crochets over the next 2 stitches. So we're just going to go ahead and finish out our drop down double crochet in the next stitch. Here's 1. And here's 2 right there, next stitch. So that is what our repeat's going to look like. So we're going to start that repeat again. It's going to begin with 2 back loop only single crochets over the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and here's 2. We're going to do 2 drop down double crochets right there into the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, here's number 2, now we're going to do 4 back loop only single crochets over the next 4 stitches. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, and here's number 4. Now we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets over the next 2 stitches. So I'm going to grab and pull up my loop, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2 for our first drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do our second. We're going to slide down, find that little bump 2 rows below, and we're going to go ahead and finish out our second drop down double crochet to end our repeat. So our repeat begins over here with our 2 back loop only single crochets, and it ends over here with our 2 drop down double crochets. If you take a look at what you're doing, you are basically working inside these 2 previous drop down sets, starting to form our little rectangles. So you're going to pause and come back to me when you're ready to move on to row 6. Here we are at the end of row 5. I just want to show this for those of you who are concerned about how you work these end rows. The main point I want to bring up is here we are at the end of row 5. My repeat would call for me to do a drop down double crochet. It's actually calling for more than that, but we would do 1 drop down double crochet right here in this very next stitch. So we're going to slide down 2 rows below, and we're going to finish out our drop down double crochet. Now we have the last stitch in the row. Instead of doing another drop down double crochet, we can never do that here at the end of the row. So we're just simply going to work into the very last stitch just as we have been with that traditional single crochet, working under both loops. And that's exactly how you begin the row as well. So when you take a look at the end of row 5, and when you finished it up, your end and the beginning of your row, it does match. And this is what your work is going to be looking like after you complete row 5. So now we're going to go ahead and clip our yarn and move on up to row number 6. So we have joined on for row 6 with our traditional single crochet in color B for this row. So we're going to be working in color B for row 6. We're going to do 1 back loop only single crochet into the very next stitch. So we're just doing this real fast to work in just a bit before our repeat starts. Now we're going to begin our repeat. We're going to be doing 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets, 4 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets. We're going to do all of that together. Sounds like a lot more than what it is. So we're going to do our 2 drop down double crochets right here into the next 2 stitches. So we're going to be sliding down 2 rows below, and we're going to be grabbing up this top loop of that double crochet drop down from the previous row. So we're just going to grab up that top loop, the first little bump that we run into, and finish out 1 drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do that a second time. So we're going to find our next stitch. We're just going to slide down and find that little bump, and we're going to pick that up and finish out our drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets over the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and here's number 2. And now we're going to do 4 drop down double crochets over the next 4 stitches. So we're just going to be working right there in between those posts that we created, doing our drop down double crochets. So there's 1, here's 2, we need a total of 4. There's number 3, find that third stitch, slide down and find that little bump, finish that out, drop down double crochet. And then we need to do that one more time. Right here's our very next stitch. And we're going to slide down and find that little bump. And we're going to grab and pull up our loop. Grab and pull through 2. Grab and pull through 2. Now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets over the next 2 stitches. And that will be ending our repeat. So our repeat began over here with 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets, 4 drop down double crochets, and 2 back loop only single crochets. So you're going to pause here and you're going to keep repeating that same repeat on down the road. If you take a look at your work, you can see that you're going to be working right here next over these 2 drop downs to form this right here. Then you're going to work across these 2 drop downs to get to this section right here where we're going to be filling it in with these drop down double crochets. So hopefully that is helpful to you the way I've explained that. Go ahead and pause here and we'll be back when you're ready to move on to row number 7. We are back for row number 7. I've already joined on with color A this time, so for me that's this orange color. We've joined on with color A with a single crochet right here in the very first stitch of the row, and we are going to begin this row by doing 1 drop down double crochet in the very next stitch. So we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook. We're going to find the very next stitch and we're just going to slide down and find that little bump right there. So there's our bump that we need. So we're going to go ahead and pick that up. Now we're going to finish out a drop down double crochet. So there's grabbing up our loop. Now we're going to grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2, and just remember to keep nice loose tension. Want to make sure that we're not drawing that up and forming a little gap there. Now our repeat's going to begin for this row. We're going to be doing 2 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 4 back loop only single crochets, and 2 drop down double crochets. So we're going to do all of that there together. So we're going to start with our 2 back loop only single crochets over the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and we're going to go in the next stitch. Here's number 2. Now we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets in the next 2 stitches. So here's the first one right here. We're going to slide down and find that little bump. Very first bump we run into. Right there. We're going to finish this out as a drop down double crochet. Draw up our loop, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. Now we're going to do a second drop down double crochet right here in the very next stitch. So we're going to grab up that loop, grab our yarn and pull up a loop. Nice loose tension. Grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. Now we need to do 4 back loop only single crochets right across this section right here. So we're going to do our first back loop only single crochet. I'm going to go right here for the very next back loop only single crochet. There's number 2. Here's number 3 and number 4. And now we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets right here, these next 2 stitches to end that repeat. So there's 1, and here is number 2. That ends the repeat. So our repeat began over here with 2 back loop only single crochets, and then it ends over here with the 2 drop down double crochets. So what you're doing here is you're finishing out this box. We're connecting everything and making these little squares or rectangles. So you're going to keep working in that exact same manner. Your repeat's going to start again with 2 back loop only single crochets. Then we are going to do 2 drop down double crochets, next 2 stitches. So we're just going to go ahead and connect those, forming that little bar. So here's the next one. So we've got 2 drop downs right here. Now we do 4 back loop only single crochets across these next 4 stitches. So there's 1. Here's number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Now we do 2 drop down double crochets to finish out this repeat. So right here we do our first drop down double crochet. Draw up nice loose tension. Make sure you wrap your yarn first. We're going to make sure we do that each and every time when we're doing a drop down, or it will not come out right. So there's our first drop down double crochet. Now we're going to wrap again, and we're going to do our second drop down double crochet, and that ends our repeat. So pause here and we will meet back up when you are ready to move on to row number 8. We're doing a total of 12 rows together, so we are almost done. So we'll be meeting back up in just a moment to move on to row number 8. You guys are going to finish out row 7, and you're going to have your work looking just like this when you do that. Remember, your repeat starts over here with the 2 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 4 back loop only single crochets, and it ends with 2 drop down double crochets. And you're joining back up with me for row number 8. We are joining back on with color B. So for me, that's this blue color right here. And this is what your work is going to be looking like at the end of row 7. And row 7 ends and begins just the same. I'm probably moving that a little too fast. But just keep in mind, whenever we're getting at the end of these rows, do not do a drop down double crochet in your last stitch. You have to always do your traditional single crochet so that you maintain a nice straight even side. If those tails weren't there, you could see that really clearly. But we're going to begin row 8 now. So for row 8, we're going to do one back loop only single crochet right here in the very next stitch before our repeat starts. So we're going to go right here into that next stitch. Try to move those tails out of the way. And we're just going to pull up that back loop only and finish out one back loop only single crochet. And now our repeat's going to begin for this row. We're going to be doing 2 drop down double crochets followed by 8 back loop only single crochet. So as you guys remember, we did this already once. We did this back on row 4. So we're going to do our 2 drop down double crochets. So there's 1 right there. Now we're going to do our second drop down double crochet. Just drop down and find that little bump, 2 rows below. Finish out our drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do 8 back loop only single crochets across these next 8 stitches. So pretty simple repeat to remember. So there's number 3. Here's number 4. Here's number 5. Back loop only single crochets, remember, all the way down. Number 6. Number 7. And number 8. Sorry, bumped the camera, I apologize. Now our repeat's going to begin again with 2 drop down double crochets and follows by 8 back loop only single crochets. So you're going to keep working in the exact same manner on down the rest of your row. So you may pause here. We will meet back up when you're ready to move on to row number 9. We are back for row number 9. I have joined on with color A with the traditional single crochet in my very first stitch. So color A for me is the orange color. We're going to begin this row by doing 6 back loop only single crochets over the next 6 stitches. So we're going to just begin by doing 1 back loop only single crochet. Here's number 2. Here is number 3. Here's number 4. Number 5 and number 6. And now our repeat's going to start for this row, and it's another really easy repeat to remember. We're going to do 2 drop down double crochets in the next 2 stitches. So if we lay this back a little bit, we're right here in the center of the box. If you look down here, we're going to be lining up with these drop downs to form the top part of this pattern. So we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets right here into these next 2 stitches. So there's our first drop down double crochet, and here is our second drop down double crochet. And now we're going to do 8 back loop only single crochets over the next 8 stitches. So there's 1, here's 2, here's number 3, 4, 5. Don't split your yarn. Make sure you get that whole back loop picked up. So we have 5. Here's number 6, number 7, and number 8. So that ends our repeat. So our repeat begins again with 2 drop down double crochets, and it ends with the 8th back loop only single crochet. So you're going to keep working in this exact same manner, beginning the repeat again with the 2 drop downs, and then we'll be meeting back up when you are ready to move on to row 10. So we have 10, 11, and 12 all to work together here, and then we will be finished. And I just keep messing up that stitch, so we're just going to start over. my second drop down. And we are going to do our 8 back loop only single crochets. So let's pause here. Keep doing that repeat over and over and over till you reach the end of your row. We'll be back in a moment and move on to row 10. Here's what our work is looking like after we finish up row number 9. So it's starting to really form up. You can tell exactly what your shape is looking like. And if you like this look and you like the width that you've achieved, you could stop right here. And this right here from row 1 to row 9 could be your pattern. We're going to go ahead and move up, and I'm going to show you how to complete the next set, which is how this is designed for you to go up another set. And then I will also explain how you go about rewinding in the video to continue to move up if you were going to do this for an entire project, like a blanket, a bag, washcloth, dish towel, that sort of thing. So we're going to move on to row 10 now. I've already joined on with color B, which is the blue for me, in the first stitch in the row with a single crochet. So our regular run-of-the-mill traditional single crochet. Now we are going to begin our repeat immediately. We're going to do 4 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loops, and then 2 more drops. So we're going to start by doing our 4 back loop only single crochets. So there's 1, here's 2, 3 back loop only, and 4 back loop only single crochets. Now we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets. So right here we're going to do our first drop down double crochet right here into this next stitch. Grab and pull up that loop, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2. And then we're going to do a second drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets. So there's 1, and here's 2. Now we're going to do 2 more drop down double crochets in the next 2 stitches to end our repeat. So there's first drop down double crochet, and here is our second drop down double crochet. Finish that out. That ends our repeat. So our repeat began over here with our 4 back loop only single crochets. Then we did the 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets, and it ends with the 2 drop down double crochets. And if you take a look at what you're doing, you are framing out with the 2 drop down double crochets around this little leg from the previous pattern that we created. So you're going to keep working in that exact same manner on down the rest of your row, doing the 4 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets, and then 2 drop down double crochets to end that repeat. So you can pause the video here and you're going to keep working, and we will meet back up when you are ready to move on to row number 11. So here we are for row number 11. I've joined back on with color A, so that's the orange color for me in the first stitch of the row with the single crochet, traditional single crochet. So now we are going to begin our repeat right away. We're going to be doing 4 drop down double crochets in the next 4 stitches. So we're going to go ahead and do 1 drop down double crochet. Now we're going to do our second drop down double crochet, a third drop down double crochet, and a fourth drop down double crochet. Get that tail out of the way. Now we're going to do 2 back loop only single crochets over the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, and here's 2. Now we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets right here in the next 2 stitches. So there's 1, here's 2, and our repeat ends with 2 back loop only single crochets over the next 2 stitches. There's 1, here's 2. So your repeat's going to begin again with the 4 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets. So you're going to pause here, meet back up with me when you're ready to move on to row 12, our final row. Here we are back for row 12. This is our final row that we're going to be working together. Traditional single crochet right here in the very first stitch of the row. We're going to begin with the repeat immediately on this row. We're going to be doing 4 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets, and 2 drop down double crochets for row 12. So we're going to start with our 4 back loop only single crochets. So I'm going right here into the very next stitch. Going to complete my back loop only single crochet. There's number 1. Here's number 2. Here is number 3 and number 4. Now we're going to do 2 drop down double crochets right here into these next 2 stitches. So we're going to go right here and find our next stitch. We're going to slide down and find that little bump. And we're going to pick up that bump and we're going to finish out our drop down double crochet. There's 1. Now we need to do a second drop down double crochet. So we're going to go right here to our next stitch, find that little bump and pick it up, and go ahead and finish out our second drop down double crochet. Now we need to do 2 back loop only single crochets over these next 2 stitches. There's 1, and here's number 2. And then our repeat ends with 2 drop down double crochets right here in the next 2 stitches. So there's our very next stitch. Grab up that little loop, go ahead and pull up a loop, grab our yarn and pull through 2, and grab the yarn and pull through 2. Now we need to do 1 more drop down double crochet to end the repeat. Go ahead and pull up that loop, grab and pull through 2, grab and pull through 2, and that ends our repeat for this row. So for row 12, our repeat begins with the 4 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loop only single crochets, and 2 drop down double crochets. So we're going to go ahead and do our repeat one more time together. So it begins with the 4 back loop only single crochets. So there's 1. Here's number 2. Here is number 3. Here's number 4. Now we do 2 drop down double crochets in these next 2 stitches. So there's 1. Here's number 2. Now we do 2 back loop only single crochets over these next 2 stitches. There's 1. And here's number 2. And then we end this repeat with 2 drop down double crochets over these next 2 stitches. Keep nice loose tension. You don't want to draw that loop up, but if you do find that you're pulling one up, a lot of times you can just tug on that stitch just to kind of bring it back into position. Now we're going to do our last drop down double crochet to end that repeat. So again, your repeat starts with the 4 back loop only single crochets, 2 drop down double crochets, 2 back loops, 2 drop downs. So you're going to keep working in that same exact manner on down the rest of your row. And if you are going to be working on a larger swatch, meaning that you're going to go up, sorry about that, for several more repeats, to make an entire project or to make something like a bag, washcloth, that sort of thing, dish towel, you are going to rewind back to row 7, which I will have marked on screen for you so that you can just move back in the same video and watch again if you need help moving on for additional rows to create additional repeats of the same exact pattern. So you can do a much larger project than what I'm showing here by just rewinding. And I will have the row counts down in the description box so that if you're having to come back to this video when you are working on a larger project, you will be able to just reference down below in the description box and click on the row that you need to jump back to start working again. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching. Please make sure that you give this video a thumbs up